Hey guys, what's going on? So, welcome to the 25.0 tier list. If you are new to my channel, I would appreciate the like and subscribe, obviously, but more so, most of my videos are very podcast. They are meant to just be like you can literally just put this in the background. It just you're not really gonna need to look at your screen at all. So that is basically I'm just gonna be talking for a large quantity of time, and anything on the screen that is relevant doesn't necessarily matter because I'm probably just gonna describe it anyway. So just put this somewhere and you may listen to this while doing other things, I guess. This is a tier list video, and I have popularized, I feel like, tier list videos for Royale. When I first started, like, not a lot of people were doing it. Now, I think a lot more people are doing it, but this is going to be the quickest tier list that I've ever done for a number of reasons. One, it was very easy to categorize all of these cards. Two, I will not be doing commons, rares, and epics. When I first started doing tier lists, I was doing all cards all together. And then at some point, I decided to split them up into doing just legendaries and then just commons, rares, and epics in two separate videos. And not enough has changed in the common, rare, and epic field. So if you do want my thoughts on commons, rares, and epics, just look back in my tier list and go to 24.0. It's basically the same thing. They didn't add any talents. There weren't any specific. There weren't enough specific like changes to anything, to the meta, to any new decks. It all basically kind of like everything at the top basically stayed at the top, and nothing at the bottom went up because they haven't added anything, and new decks have not really emerged. And the new decks that did emerge are just using the same strategies that have already existed. So if you are looking for a commons, rares, and epics, my thoughts on commons, rares, and epics, just look for 24.0. It's there under my tier lists. But this is going to be 25.0, and it's just going to be legendaries. And the other reason why this was very simple to do was because there has been a major shift in the game. And essentially what has ended up happening is that most of the best units are now event-based units. Units that are locked behind the paywall of events. Mirror Match, Rush for Glory, and then Royal Trials. Most of those are the best of the best units. And there are a couple of outliers, and that's why I waited a little while I always wait like a couple weeks or a week after a patch drops in order to see where everything lands. So there are a couple of outliers, but for the most part, those are going to be the best units. And because those are the best DPS units, it was very easy to create this tier list. Second thing, Toxic is all in its own specific category that I'll explain more in depth when I go into my tier list. But essentially, all of those cards are good in just the one deck, and so it was difficult to place any of those cards outside of that specific deck because it is in and of itself its own deck. And that is the way that all of those cards are best used. You could use any of those cards in other decks as quote-unquote support cards or supplementary cards, but it makes that deck it makes another deck weaker, and it's not the best version of what that can be. And my last thought, actually I have two more thoughts. This is a tier list at max capacity. So if you are looking for, I get this question all the time when I put out tier lists. If you are looking for like, oh, what's good at 7? oh, what's good at level 9? Oh, what's good at level 11? I have a how should you invest guide for all legendaries. You should probably go into that. But if you're specifically looking for a tier list at a separate level that is not at max level, that is essentially impossible for me to do, because I would then have to, because you have to normalize everything in a specific way. So if your question is, oh, but I only have all of my legendaries at level 9, why don't you make a tier list for level 9? I would then have to make a tier list for every single level. I would have to make a tier list at 7, at 8, at 9, at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 1 at max. And there's really no point in doing that because all of your cards are going to be different than each other. You're not going to like level up all of your cards, or you shouldn't be leveling up all of your cards at the same time. Like all of your cards will not be at level 7 and then at level 8 and then at level 9, right? So maybe your question is, but I have a level 11 Blade Dancer. Is it better than a level 7 Demon Hunter, right? And I understand those questions, but at the same time, there's so many more factors that would factor into that kind of question that cannot be covered in a generic tier list. And I can't go into all of the different amounts of levels that you might have that are in your game. And so essentially what this is if you had every single card maxed, and that is what you should be working towards anyway, if you had every card maxed out, this would be the best of the best cards, for that I think that you should use, that are probably the best. With all that being said, I'm going to go into my tier list somewhere, probably here. And as I said, I'm going to start at the top and then go to the bottom. So toxic is all in its own. I put it all in its own separate category because I feel like these are the best. Or it is its own deck. There is a Sea Dog Shaman deck. I think that a Sea Dog Shaman deck is better than a Robot Shaman deck. And I think that Sea Dog is the best DPS toxic unit. The Minotaur, there's a argument to say that Minotaur is better. I do think that Sea Dog is better. Even though it's gone through several nerfs, I think it is at the top of the toxic deck DPS cards. Because any deck, you need at least a singular DPS card. It can't all just be support cards. You need to kill things. And I think that Sea Dog has a very impressive amount of DPS that it can do, because it grows over time. It has a growth over time mechanic. It doesn't grow infinitely like any other deck. But for the amount of time that you should be in the game as a toxic player, I think that it has a surprising amount of damage that it can do. I think that Frost is the best actual singular support toxic support unit. And the other thing to note about the toxic deck is that they all have to be at max. The Sea Dog has to be at max, so that because it's your only damage dealer and you need to deal as much damage as you can so that you can last into like a later portion of the game. Frost is only really good because of the Frost King ability at level 15. I wouldn't even use it prior to that. Being able to kill all of the trapper traps with Ice Walk is also very key to beating other decks, and that's a 13 ability. The 15 ability is why you're specifically using it, though. Being able to just merge out Frosts and get higher level Frosts so that you can get a higher level Frost King, so that you can start freezing things just passively is insane. Minotaur, I think, is the next best DPS toxic card. Obviously, because you're able to stun, which is why you're using Robot. But I do think that Minotaur has a better damage output than Robot. I think it's more consistent. I think that it's just because it does some amount of percent damage. I think that it's just better. Meteor, this is another card that's really only good at 15, obviously because it's doing more damage, but because of the level 15 ability that knocks down, or that Shaman's a unit 3 levels. I think that it's insane. Being like randomly doing that just late game and like just knocking something down 3 levels is crazy. Shaman is part of Toxic. I thought of putting Shaman at, you know, in like F tier, but it is a specific, see, that is another version of like how I would rank these cards if they were outside of its own like list. I think I would rate Shaman as like probably an F tier card or like something really low. But it is obviously very good, and it's the main use for it's the best usage of a Shaman is in a Toxic deck. I'm not saying that Toxic is the best deck, because it's definitely not. But all of these cards can't really be ranked individually outside of its own deck. And inside of its own deck, you kind of need to have everything at level 15. Meteor is not technically in that deck, but I decided to throw it in there anyway because it is also a Toxic card. Or it's best used as a Toxic card more so than a DPS card. Summoner is normally thrown in that mix. It would be like Sea Dog, Frost, Shaman, probably like a Harlequin, and then a Summoner. The Summoner ability to increase their summoning cost is huge. The 13 ability that increases their attack, your opponent's speed, is super key with the Frost, with the Ice Walk. So not only are you giving them speedy monsters, but then you're also making them even faster with the Ice Walk. There's just a lot of synergy within the Toxic deck. And then obviously you have to have like a very high level Necromancer, or a very high level, like a max level Snowflake. But that is the Toxic deck. I feel like if you have all of those cards at max level and a very high level, either Necromancer or a Snowflake, I think it is a very strong deck. You're not going to beat everything. There are specific decks that specifically counter that deck. But I think that if you decide to build that deck, you have to have everything at max, and that is the only time that it will be good. Anything that is subpar max with that entire deck, I don't think it's that great. Moving on. So the other thing that I want to note is that I only have 3 other categories. I have S plus. I'm sorry, 4 categories. I have S plus, S, A, and F. I want to state this up front. The way that I have organized this list is that there are no bad cards. I mean, okay, let me go through the bad cards. Corsair is the best of the bad cards. I think it's still, like, if you have a max Corsair, I think it's still kind of okay, but there are no Corsair decks in any reasonable, like anything in like League 9, League 10, League 11, League 12. I don't see a Corsair deck. When they took away percentage damage for Corsair and just made it a strictly damage dealing unit, it took away a lot of its power. I think it's still okay. I think it's better than Boreas, and you might even be able to argue a Boreas Grindstone deck is better than a Corsair deck. But I think if you have a level 15 Corsair, I do think that it is better than the DPS, the actual DPS of a max Boreas deck, which is the max Grindstone. I think Corsair beats Grindstone. And that's the reason why I put it at the top of that list. Boreas Grindstone is a thing for some people. Clock does no longer decreases their attack speed when it is leveled up. You can increase the decrease of their attack speed by increasing the mana level, and then also by leveling it up. So obviously a level 15 is going to do better than a level 1. But essentially, if you have max mana power up and 14 clocks on your field, that's the amount that it's doing. It doesn't actually matter if those 14 clocks are leveled up in any way. That they took that away. And because they took that away, that's why you never see robot clock decks or Inquisitor clock decks. it just doesn't do anything anymore. Merging them out, when you merge out like 2 level 2 clocks, you are able to slow down 3 units for a specific amount of time. When you merge out, 2 level 6 clocks, right? You can affect 7 things on their board for a specific amount of time, but that is the only thing that leveling up clock, or merge ranking it up in game, that's the only thing that it does. Essentially, if you have 14 clocks, you are doing the best that you can, and it's not good enough. And that's why you never see clock decks anymore. Stasis does some amount of something in some decks. It slows, but it's not better than a Frost. It's not, none of these cards are used in any serious decks. Demonologist, I basically never see, and if I ever do see it in like something like a Meteor Minotaur variant, I'm always questioning that they should have replaced that with literally anything else, and now I kind of feel like I can beat them because they have a dead card in their deck. And then Hex, I will always forever regard as the worst card in this, the worst legendary card in this game. But beyond that, I only have 3 categories, and that is S+, S, and A. Which is to say, there are no bad cards. And so but because there are no bad cards, I feel like a lot of people will still say, why is this here? Why is this here? And for everybody who thinks my tier list is wrong, you're entitled to that opinion. This is my opinion. I'd like to think that I am backing this up with significant data by looking at worldwide battles. As a player, you can always look through worldwide battles. If you go in game, that's how I get all of my information for all of my tier lists. If you ever want to create your own tier list at any given moment, you can do this exact same thing as well. I always try to wait about a week before I release a tier list video so that I can get pretty accurate information over the course of time. When you go into replays, when you go into worldwide, basically just look at League 9 or above, and you'll see most of these decks that are doing something. Portal Mage, there's a Meteor Minotaur deck that uses Portal Mage. I think that if you added Frost to it, it would be much better. This is a Tesla deck. This is a Spirit Master deck. This is a Bard deck. This is a Spirit Master deck. And basically what you're looking for is anything that's dealing above 10 billion damage. Anything above 10 billion damage, I feel like is pretty good. When you start going into the 50s, this is a 26 billion damage game with a Blade Dancer. This is a 4 billion damage game with a Demon Hunter. This is a 7 billion damage game with a Blade Dancer. When you start going into the 50s of billions of damage, that's when you can start realizing that, okay, that card is really, really good. This is an 84 billion damage game with Bard. This is a Meteor Minotaur DPS deck with Portal Mage and then Frost, like I was saying earlier. I think it's very strong. But I also don't think that there are a lot of people piloting this deck. It's obviously very good. It beat a Riding Hood deck. This is an 80 billion damage game with a level 20 Zeus. And this is why I say that you have to have all of these cards at max. If you have any of these cards at less than what the best potential that it could be, you were gonna do significantly less damage. With my just to showcase my own thing. So I have this Spirit Master deck. I have a Max Spirit Master, a Max Night Statue, a Max Scrapper. I'm actually not using... I wouldn't normally use Sharpshooter or Trapper. I think I would put Witch in here. I think I was just trying it out. But I have a level 12 Witch and a level 12 Trapper, and I have a level 15 Mari. Because I don't have a level 20 Mari to do more defense reduction with the level 15 ability, because I don't have Witch to do even more, to give me even more bonuses with Gift of the Raven, because obviously at 12, 13, 14, and 15, you're getting higher and higher bonuses, because I don't have a Trapper at level 15 to give me even more armor destruction. I'm doing around, I want to say 20 billion damage, whereas a maxed out version of this deck, it's doing like 50, 60 billion damage. And that is the difference between having a maxed out version of a deck and not. With all that being said, the way that I have categorized all of these cards, is S+, S tier, and A tier. There are no bad cards, except for that F tier. Toxic is whatever you want it to be. I feel like sometimes it's really great, sometimes it's really bad and doesn't do anything against the other deck. It's like a high risk, high reward kind of situation, and that's why I want it outside of the regular rest of the cards that are trying to specifically win on damage alone. And I think that the way that I've categorized this is S+ is basically every single support card. You should be leveling up all of your support cards because your deck should consist of one singular DPS card, and then four support cards. And what I'm trying to say there is that you need some combination of 4 of these support cards, but you only need one DPS card. And whether or not your DPS card is a Riding Hood or it's a Demon Hunter, the strength of that deck is going to specifically be on the strength of your support cards. If you don't have a max level Witch, if you don't have a max level Dryad to give you the double upgrades, if you don't have a max Trapper in order to give you a higher defense reduction, if you don't have a max Knight statue to give you the attack, the area attack and the defense reduction, if you don't have a max Scrapper to give you potential triple upgrades at a more percentage rate, if you don't have all of these support cards at max, your deck is going to be significantly worse. And with that being said, I put Banshee at the top of the S+ support cards. I think that Banshee is not only a great support card when you get it to level 15 and have the ability to use the Banshee's Wail, but it's also a very, very strong DPS card. I have not invested in my Banshee enough, and I feel like if I could say that you should upgrade one card in this game, it would probably be Banshee. You can use it from from when you get it at 7 to 15 as a DPS card, and when you do get it to 15, it's one of the best support cards that you can slot into any deck. So whereas most support cards are for specific decks, Banshee you can put in any deck, and I feel like it makes it a little bit better. When they took away the Bombardier ability to stun bosses, and then the Frost ability is only when you merge Mark of Ice Frosts, Banshee is now the only unit that has the ability to just sit on the field, and at will you can just activate the ability and negate any boss ability, giving you more time to kill a boss. You can negate tribunals so that you don't your entire field doesn't get automatically level down. If you need just a little bit more time to kill another boss, you get it. And that is, and you're just able to eke out those wins when maybe you wouldn't have been able to win. Getting a couple of extra seconds to kill a boss when you're evenly matched with your opponent is so huge. Not getting tribunal late game is so huge. I think that Banshee, it just does so much. It's a DPS card that has the ability to become a support card. And I think for that reason, it should definitely be the best card in this game. I think it just does so many things. which is used in so many decks. You could theoretically run it as a toxic card. That is still an option. There are some toxic decks that still run Witch, which is why it's also so high. But most people run it for the Gift of the Raven ability, because it's increasing your board, and then the insta-kill ability. A lot of people don't really use the 13 and the 15. That's not why you're upgrading your Witch. You're upgrading your Witch so that Gift of the Raven does more. And I think that's all it needs to do. The fact that it even has 2 other abilities is insane. Night Statue, it's being used in literally everything. There's every single like DPS deck. If you're not running Night Statue, then you're running Enchant Sword in your deck. Those are the 2 options. Your deck either has a Night Statue or it has an Enchant Sword. And in both cases, your deck also probably has a Witch. I think that Scrapper, even though it got nerfed a lot with this last patch, I think that it is still very good. It still does everything that it's meant to do. It does it a little bit worse than what it was before, but that doesn't necessarily matter because it does what you want it to do anyway. And everybody got nerfed. It wasn't just you. Everybody got nerfed, right? And so even though it's worse than what it was, than your memory of what it was before, how it's being used now, that's how everybody is using it. I think that Trapper is also very strong. The ability to slow down the field, as well as do defense reduction is crazy. There are some games where both of us get bedlammed, and because I have Trapper and they don't, I win. Being able to slow the field just a little bit can eke out those victories for you as well. And I think that the ability to do defense reduction in this game where everything is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger over the course of the game is very big. I've tried running a deck with just Witch as opposed to running it with Witch and Trapper, and I can definitely feel the difference. The insta-kill on Witch is never enough. You need the defense reduction to be able to kill bosses. And that super helps. Enchant Sword, I would only really recommend at level 13, but if you do get it to level 13, I think that it's very good. The splash ability and being able to leave just one Enchant Sword on the field and just have it splash your field over and over and over is great. If you're running Enchant Sword, it's because you're not running Night Statue. And I think that those decks have the ability to obviously do very, very well. Dryad is very good at pretty much every level. It's another card that got nerfed. It went from 50% damage for Fairy of Rage to 30%. But I think that the decks that are running a Dryad as opposed to Scrapper, because that's another thing. They've started to make you, they've started to force you to pick one or another. So in the decks that are running Night Statue, those decks are not running Enchant Sword. And in the decks that are running Scrapper, those decks are not running Dryad. And so in the decks that are running Dryad, I think that it's still very good. You're not going to stop using it. Summoner is very strong as well. I think it's used in less decks than all of these other cards. I think that is a more niche kind of specific card that is used in specific decks, but it is obviously still very strong. And I think that Harley Quinn is the worst of the support units. Again, it's one of those things that are used in specific decks, and because the talents are not overly amazing, I don't really feel bad for putting it at the bottom of S+. So with all of that being said, these are all of your DPS cards. There are only 2 categories. It's S tier and A tier, and that's it. They've made this very easy for me because I feel like this list is very obvious. And for everybody that is inevitably going to complain in the comments that this card is better than this card and this card is better than this card, something had to be at the bottom and something had to be at the top. That's essentially how I look at this. It's like if you were given the option of, who are the best basketball players, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, or LeBron James. And you decided to put like Kobe Bryant at number 1 and Michael Jordan at number 3, right? And somebody, that was like, got super angry. Like Michael Jordan shouldn't be at number 3. He should be at number 1. And Kobe Bryant should be at number 3. And LeBron James is number 2. And then some LeBron James fan comes in. No, LeBron James should definitely be at number 1. And Kobe Bryant should be at 3. And Michael Jordan should be at 2, right? It's the top 3. They're all great. and I feel like that is something that this game is becoming. I feel like a lot of these cards are kind of becoming the same. I think that they're like Bard is very, very strong, obviously right now. But at some point, Spirit Master was very, very strong until they nerfed the critical percentage, the level 15 ability. And so it was far and away superior than everything else. But once they nerfed that ability, it just became every other strong unit. I feel like right now there is a basic rock, paper, scissors with any of the top cards. All of the top cards are great. I think Bard is the best, obviously right now, but I think that will change very quickly. Riding Hood, Genie, Spirit Master, Monk, Bruiser, all of these cards are great. I feel like on any given day, like just go to Momo Royale's channel. I made this a meme a little bit ago, and it's basically like Bard beats everything, and then it was like Bard loses to Demon Hunter, and then it was like Bard did 400 billion against Riding Hood, and then it was like Bard loses to Spirit Master. I feel like it was just like the entire the best of the best cards. They're all the best of the best cards, and when everything is special, then nothing is special. I feel like you can say that Bard is probably the best, Riding Hood is probably second, Genie's probably third, or maybe Spirit Master's third. Monk is also very strong. I thought that Monk was going to get nerfed into the ground when they nerfed Jay this patch. Monk is still using Jay, and it's still doing great. Bruiser is also currently still doing amazing. I don't think Tesla, once I go into A, I think these are the decks that if I were to use, I would be afraid of everything that is in S, and I'd probably assume that I'm probably going to lose. And that's why I've even created an A tier. I think that Tesla is the best of the A tier. I think that it has the potential to be like an S tier card, but I also don't see anybody in League 9 or above really using a Tesla to any amount of success to where a lot of people are using that card. In League 9 or above, I see a lot of Bard decks, obviously, a lot of Riding Hood decks, a lot of Genie decks, a lot of Spirit Master decks. You can see a large quantity of these decks. There might be the odd game where Tesla beats a Bard or Tesla beats a Riding Hood, but I also don't see a large quantity of people playing Tesla in that pool of people being successful. But I do think that it has the highest potential of being successful. I think Cultist is also very strong. Part of me doesn't even know how it's that strong, but I've faced a couple of Tesla decks with my Spirit Master, and I've done like 30 billion damage and it beat me. So I can't really say that Cultist is not great. But again, at the same time, I don't also see it being S tier great because I don't see people at that caliber playing Cultist. I do think that it's very strong. Again, this is A tier. This is the bottom of the barrel Michael Jordan. This is A tier is still great. And I feel like a lot of people are going to give me a lot of shit in the comments for being like, Cultist should be an S tier. It's like, and there's an argument to be made that everything can be an S tier. everything is great. And that's my problem with the game right now. You can literally argue that anything in my A tier should be an S tier, and putting that in S tier just means that everything is the same. And because I wanted to kind of differentiate the best from pretty good, from amazing to pretty amazing, I feel like that's the difference in these two tiers. It's amazing and pretty amazing. Blade Dancer, the new school, Blade Dancer, Sharpen Spear, with like Chemist or Trapper or Witch, some combination of that, I think is very strong. Inquisitor, Dark Inquisitor, obviously. I think Dark Inquisitor, now that they're able to focus on just using support cards as opposed to doing Dark Inquisitor Clock, I think that's still pretty good. Assuming that your Dark Inquisitor doesn't get Dark Priest and you immediately lose. I think Demon Hunter is still putting up strong numbers, but not as good as everything else. And I don't think that Robot Shaman is the toxic deck to go for, which is why I threw it out of toxic. I think that there is the specific robot deck is a Robot Shaman deck, and I don't think it's as good as the actual toxic deck. If I were to run and especially being an event unit, Robot is an event unit, it's the same difficulty as getting a Sea Dog. You should invest in getting a Sea Dog as opposed to getting a Robot, if you are going to go toxic, because I think that not only does Sea Dog do better damage, but it's also just in and of itself a better toxic card, because it has the explosive surprises, and Robot only stuns. And even though the stuns can be great, I think that blowing up a unit is much better. But yeah, that's pretty much my tier list. And I and I will say this again, I think that every DPS card is pretty good. And that's kind of my problem with this, with 25.0 and where we are in the game. Most event units are the best units in this game. Bard, Riding Hood, Genie, Spirit Master, Tesla to some degree, Sea Dog, all of those are event units. All of them are the best units in this game. I think that Monk putting up as impressive damage numbers as it is very good for this game. I think that Bruiser, again, being a regular legendary that you can get out of a box as a quote-unquote free-to-play player, being able to max either of those two cards is good for this game. So I'm happy that they're putting up as high damage numbers as they are, but they're not going to beat, at max level, they're not going to beat a Bard deck, a Riding Hood deck, a Genie deck, a Spirit Master deck. But I do think that it's good that they are as good as they are. So as a free-to-play player, there's something to work towards still. There was a part of me that was very afraid that my far and away S tier was just going to be event units, and it's not, but it's very close. The best units are going to be event units. It would shock me to no end if they put Bard in a regular legendary chest and they don't just add it to some event. That would be incredibly shocking to me if they don't end up doing that. But yeah, that's my tier list. I really want Tesla to be better. I'm going to max out a Tesla next month. And I guess I'll see how good or not great it is and why people are just choosing to not use it. Because you have to understand that the reason why I say that this is everything at max level, there was a time when Bard first, like the couple of days when it first came out, and the event just dropped and people got maxed out a level 15 Bard immediately, people were still choosing to play Riding Hood or to play Genie, because Bard was good, but it wasn't great. Somebody didn't figure out how to break it. And now that they've kind of figured out how to break it, and people are now doing hundreds and 200 billion damage numbers with Bard, I think that now within the next couple of patches, they're probably going to patch Bard to where it's really just going to be a coin toss of Bard, Riding Hood, Genie, Spirit Master, and like Bruiser and and monk. It's really just going to be like they're all basically the same thing, and you can put anything anywhere and it's probably correct. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments of how correct I am in this very definitive, absolutely 100% correct tier list. But thank you guys for watching. And I